Emily Carter never thought much about herself. She woke up each day before the sun, tied her hair into a loose bun, and walked the same stretch of road that led to the small diner where she worked. The mornings were always quiet. Streetlights glowed like soft lanterns, and the air smelled faintly of coffee from the bakery down the block. Emily liked that stillness. It made her feel like the world paused for a moment before racing into another busy day. She worked at Maplewood Diner, the kind of place people drove past without noticing. The building was old, just a simple square with red paint that had peeled off in many places. A single sign blinked on and off, and the sound of the neon buzzing was louder than traffic during early hours. Yet the locals loved it. They came every morning, asking for the same usual orders, greeting the cooks like family. Emily never had big dreams when she was younger. She was not someone who imagined fancy jobs or exciting travel. Life moved very differently for her. Her mother taught her that life did not need to be big in order to be meaningful. Her mother also taught her music, or at least tried. There was an old keyboard in their home when Emily was a child. It had missing keys, and it made quiet sounds when pressed too hard, but it was a treasured object. Emily remembered the evenings when her mother sat beside her, correcting her fingers gently. "Relax your hand. Let the music come, not force it," she would say. Emily learned melodies without realizing they were difficult. She did it naturally, without lessons, just from watching and listening. But when her mother passed away, Emily closed the keyboard and never touched it again. It hurt too much. Many years later, she worked in a diner, clearing plates and pouring coffee. Music lived inside her, but nobody knew. Her days usually looked the same. She arrived when the chairs were still upside down on tables and helped set them in place. She turned on the small radio behind the counter, mostly out of habit. Even though half the time it played static, she heated the coffee pots, brought out stacks of menus, and waited for customers. One thing stood out during her walk to work each day: the old public piano near the bus stop. The city placed it there during a community event, planning to decorate the area, but the project was never finished. The piano sat alone, scratched, faded, and slightly tilted. Rainwater had swollen its wood. The paint on the lid chipped away in thin strips. Most keys were still working, but a few stuck down when pressed. People sometimes laughed at it, calling it the broken music box. Nobody played it anymore, but Emily did. Occasionally, when nobody was nearby, she would stop after work, sit, and press a few notes. She never played anything loud, never anything long. It was just enough to feel connected to a part of herself she had hidden away. One morning, she walked faster than usual. Bills were piling up at home: rent, electricity, overdue medical expenses. She lived in a tiny apartment above a hardware store, where footsteps echoed through the walls and the sink rattled each time water ran. Life was not glamorous, and she never tried to make it seem otherwise. When she arrived at the diner, she put on her apron. The doorbell jingled, signaling someone had entered. "Morning," said a cook named Oliver, who had worked there longer than anyone could remember. His voice was always low, as if mornings belonged to whispers. "Morning," she replied. The first customers arrived not long after, a group of older men who met every day at the same booth. They ordered the same breakfast: eggs, toast, and coffee. They argued quietly about sports, as they always did, and left tips made of small coins and soft dollar bills folded twice. Emily moved from table to table with soft footsteps. She remembered orders without writing anything down. Customers liked her because she listened more than she talked. She often smiled, sometimes out of kindness, other times out of habit, but she never complained. Even when extra shifts came, even when people were rude, even when the diner dishwasher broke and she had to clean plates by hand, she simply continued. Later that same day, near noon, the door swung open harder than usual. Emily looked up. A man walked in wearing a flawless gray suit, the type of suit that belonged in city offices, not small diners. He was tall, sharp-featured, and carried the kind of posture that made others step out of his way. His name was Jonathan Hale, though Emily did not know that yet. Most people recognized him from news channels, newspaper covers, or online videos. He was the type of person who always had meetings, always had people waiting, always moved with purpose. He came from a world where numbers mattered more than feelings. Jonathan sat alone at a corner table, not bothered by the stares of others. The older group of regulars whispered to one another, but Jonathan ignored them. Emily walked over with a notepad, even though she rarely used it. "Coffee?" she asked. "Black, nothing added," he answered, His tone was brisk, almost impatient. She brought his coffee quickly and set it down gently in front of him. He nodded without saying thank you. That did not bother her. She served all types of people. Some were kind, some tired, some rude. She treated everyone the same. But Jonathan was not just tired or rude. He looked like someone carrying weight, not emotional weight, but something that came from many decisions gone wrong. Emily could feel that energy from across the room. For a while, nothing unusual happened. Customers came and left. Plates clattered. The air smelled of toasted bread and bacon. Music played faintly from the radio. Jonathan took phone calls repeatedly. His voice was low when he spoke, but his words were sharp. Emily overheard pieces. Not acceptable. Pull out. Loss. Cancel the deal. Every phrase sounded tense. He closed his phone, rubbed his forehead, then sat staring into his coffee. When Emily passed by, he looked up and said, "Do you ever wish you could change your life just by doing one unexpected thing?" She paused, surprised. He was not the type to make small talk. Sometimes. She answered quietly. Jonathan nodded, as though her answer mattered. He ordered lunch, barely ate half, then sat there longer than most customers ever did. Emily did not ask why. It was not her place. As the afternoon light shifted through the windows, soft shadows appeared across the tables. Emily began cleaning the counters even though her shift was not done yet. The bell above the door chimed again as a cold breeze entered. Jonathan stood and reached into his jacket pocket, placing cash on the counter. Not just enough for his meal, but more, much more. Emily blinked, unsure whether she should say anything. He did not give her a chance. He simply nodded once and walked outside. She continued wiping the counter, unaware that this brief moment was only the beginning of something far larger. Outside, as Jonathan reached his car, he paused. His gaze landed on the old piano by the bus stop. He huffed quietly, amused that something so worn out belonged to such an ordinary street. Emily looked outside through the window. She saw him glance at the piano and felt her stomach twist. She wondered if he would sit and play. He didn't. He simply looked at it like someone examining something pointless. Emily finished stacking plates and returned to refill coffee cups. Yet her eyes drifted toward the window once more. The piano stood still, untouched. That was how the day ended, quietly, without anyone knowing that two strangers had crossed paths in a way that would soon affect them both. Emily walked home later that evening, tired, holding her tip money in a small pouch. She passed the piano again. She stopped. She sat. She placed her fingers gently on the keys, pressing only one. The sound was soft, faint, almost lost under night air. She pressed another, and another. The melody that came was not complete, just fragments, gentle pieces of something she had once known so deeply. Only the streetlights witnessed it. She stood again and continued walking. Her shoes scuffed lightly against the pavement, and she wished she could walk into a life that did not feel so small. But she did not yet know that her life was already changing, piece by piece, quietly, like music forming its beginning note. The next morning came almost too fast for Emily. She woke to the soft buzzing of her alarm and lay still for a moment, letting her eyes adjust. Her room was dim, curtains drawn, and the small heater in the corner rattled like it was struggling to do its job. She stretched, rubbed her face, and stood up slowly. She made coffee at home because it saved money. The scent filled the small room, drifting toward an old bookshelf where unpaid envelopes were stacked neatly. She didn't open them. She already knew what they said. She packed her worn bag, put on the same apron she washed the night before, and stepped into the chilly morning. On the way to the diner, she passed the piano again. She glanced at it but didn't stop. Sometimes music called her, but on certain days she walked past like it didn't exist. When she entered the diner, Oliver was wiping down the counters. He nodded quietly. "Morning," she said. He nodded again. Oliver wasn't much of a talker, but he was dependable. Someone once said if Oliver ever quit, the diner's walls would fall down just from shock. Chairs were straightened, tables cleaned, but something felt different. Emily couldn't explain it. Maybe it was simply the memory of yesterday, the man in the suit, the large tip, the way he looked at the piano. Customers trickled in as the sun replaced early shadows. The older group of men arrived again. They always came around the same time, wearing jackets that looked older than the diner itself. One of them waved at Emily. "You're early." He joked. "I always am," she replied. They laughed, placed the same orders, and continued their gentle arguments about yesterday's game. Emily walked to the kitchen window, grabbed plates, and moved across the floor with practiced ease. Her body worked without thinking. She didn't need reminders. The diner felt like a routine she could do even half asleep. But late morning brought something unexpected. The door opened and Jonathan walked in again. Not many people visited the diner twice in a row, especially someone like him. His suit was different today, still sharp, still expensive, but his expression was less tense. He sat at the same table. Emily steadied herself before walking over coffee. She asked, "Black, same as yesterday?" She nodded and walked away. This time, he watched her, not in a strange way, just curious, like he was trying to understand her. Emily didn't hold eye contact for long. She had tables to serve, orders to check, bills to count. When she placed his coffee down, he spoke. "You played the piano last night." Emily froze. "How did you?" she began. "I saw you," he said simply. "I was still parked down the street. I thought you were just walking home. But then you stopped." Her cheeks warmed. "Oh," she said quietly. "I didn't know employees here had time for music." He continued. She didn't reply. Instead, she took an order from another table and brought plates back for pickup. But Jonathan wasn't done. When she returned with his food, toast, eggs, nothing fancy, he asked, "Do you actually know how to play? Or were you just making noise?" Emily blinked slowly. "I know how to play," she answered. He seemed amused. "You didn't look very confident," he said. She swallowed. "I wasn't trying to show anything. I was just playing for myself." Jonathan leaned back. "You ever try playing in front of people?" "No, why not?" Emily shifted her weight. "I just don't," she said softly. He smiled, not kindly, not unkindly, but challengingly. "You should try it sometime." Emily didn't answer. She returned to work. Time moved. Meals were served. Voices blended into background noise. But Jonathan stayed longer than expected again. It wasn't busy. So Emily eventually walked over to his table to clear the empty plates. Jonathan tapped the table lightly. "How long have you worked here?" "A few years," she said. "And before that?" Emily didn't want to open old doors, so she kept her answer simple. "I was looking for work and ended up here." "And music?" he asked. "What about it?" She replied. "You sounded like someone who knows more than basic notes." Emily felt something tighten in her chest. "My mother taught me when I was younger. That's all." Jonathan paused. "She must have been good." "She was," Emily whispered. Something softened in his eyes, though he didn't say anything right away. Unfamiliar silence sat between them. Finally, he finished his drink and stood. "Play something today," he said. She laughed under her breath. "No, people don't want that." "I do," he said. Then he reached into his wallet. He placed bills on the table. "More than enough. If you play something real before your shift ends, I will double this." Emily stared at the money. "That's not necessary," she said. "That's why it's a dare," he replied. The room quieted. Oliver looked over. The older men paused mid-conversation. Someone whispered, "Is he serious?" Jonathan wasn't smiling. "He meant it. You have until closing," he said. Then he walked out. The door closed softly behind him. The diner stayed quiet for several seconds. One of the older men leaned forward. "You should do it," he told Emily. Emily shook her head. "No, I don't play for crowds." "Crowds?" He laughed. "There's barely 10 people here most days." Another chimed in. "You'll regret it if you don't." She looked at the money on the table. Again, that money could cover rent, or groceries, or that overdue medical bill she had been ignoring. But fear weighed heavier than need. She placed the money in the counter drawer and continued working. She didn't think about it, or pretended not to. Hours passed. Lunch rush came, then faded. Families ate sandwiches. Students grabbed fries. Workers from nearby shops ordered quick meals. Every so often someone mentioned the dare. "You going to do it? You play piano, right? What song will you choose?" Emily forced a soft smile each time, saying nothing. By late afternoon, her chest felt tight. Work wasn't tiring, thinking was. She wiped tables slower, counted tips slower, and walked back and forth without purpose. The piano outside waited. She imagined touching the keys while people watched. Her hands trembled at the thought. Finally, Oliver approached. "You should go," he said, "before more people show up." "I can't," she whispered. "You can," he replied. "But what if I mess up?" Oliver shrugged. "Then you mess up," he said. "People drop plates here all the time. Nobody remembers." 2 minutes later, Emily let out a shaky breath. She went outside. The air felt cooler than before. The sky turned soft orange as light dimmed around the block. The piano looked older today, like it aged in the time she spent thinking. A few customers followed her out. Not Many. Just enough to make her heart jump. She sat. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She took a deep breath. She pressed a single note. It rang softly, floating through the quiet street. Another and another. A melody formed. Slow. Fragile. But real. People stopped walking. When they heard it, someone stood still. Near the bus stop. Another quietly pulled out a phone. Emily's hands shook, but the music did and single quotes. Her mother's memory returned, not painful this time, but like someone placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Emily played the song she used to play at home, the same one her mother taught her before bedtime. Notes fell like soft rain. The street felt larger, the air warmer. Her heartbeat steadier. She didn't notice when more people gathered. She didn't notice when Oliver stepped outside, leaning against the wall, arms folded. She didn't even notice Jonathan's car rolling up, stopping quietly at the curb. She played. Only when she reached the final note did she look up. People clapped. Not loud, not wild. But real. And that was enough. Jonathan walked closer. That, he said, wasn't noise. Emily didn't reply. She was still catching her breath. He placed more money on top of what he left earlier. Then he said, "Tomorrow play again." Emily stared at him. She didn't agree. She didn't refuse. She only sat quietly as he turned and walked back to his car. And even after he drove away, Emily remained there, hands resting on the piano, listening to the echo of her own music fading into the evening light. Emily woke up the next day with a strange heaviness in her chest. It wasn't sadness and it wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like she was carrying something new, something fragile and important. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time before she stood up. The morning light slipped through thin curtains and fell over her small kitchen table. Where the money Jonathan had left was still neatly placed. She hadn't spent it. She hadn't moved it. She wasn't even sure she deserved it. After getting ready, she tucked the bills into a drawer and headed out. The walk toward Maplewood Diner felt shorter this time, though she took the same steps, passed the same bench, saw the same stray cat that always sat near the alley. But the piano, she stopped there today. She rested her fingers on the lid, just for a moment, before continuing. When she arrived at the diner, things were already busier than usual. People filled more tables than just the regular crowd. Some were strangers, others familiar faces. Oliver moved from grill to counter in his slow but steady rhythm. "You're late today," he muttered. Emily wasn't late. She was right on time, but she didn't argue. She simply tied her apron and began serving. A woman seated near the window smiled at her. "You're the girl who played yesterday," she said. Emily froze. "Oh, I didn't really play anything important," she replied. "That wasn't just playing," the woman insisted. "My daughter recorded you." She watched it over and over. Emily looked down at the floor as warmth filled her cheeks. She didn't know what to say. The rush of breakfast orders pulled her back into motion. Pancakes, toast, black coffee, more coffee. The bell above the kitchen window rang repeatedly. Around mid-morning, Jonathan walked in. He didn't go straight to his old table. Instead, he paused near the counter. "Did you think about yesterday?" he asked. Emily didn't know how to answer that truthfully. "I didn't think much," she said. "Well, think today," he replied. Then he sat down. She poured him coffee. Then another table called her name. She moved around the diner the same way she always had, only now she kept feeling his gaze from across the room. At one point he spoke without raising his voice. "You're supposed to play again." Emily glanced over her shoulder. "No one agreed to that." "You didn't say no," he answered. She didn't understand him, his confidence, his certainty, his ability to speak as though everything would go exactly how he planned. The morning drifted into noon. People came, people left, but the diner buzzed more than usual. Someone asked Oliver, "Is the piano girl playing again today?" Oliver replied bluntly, "Ask her." Emily tried to pretend she didn't hear. Around lunchtime, a small group gathered outside near the piano. Someone even wiped the keys with napkins. Someone else dusted off the seat. Emily peeked through the window, and her stomach twisted. Jonathan stepped outside and stood near the piano as though announcing something. Emily was wiping a table when he walked back inside. "It's ready," he told her. She turned slowly. "I'm not playing again," she whispered. "You didn't even hear what I was offering," he replied. "I don't want anything from you," she said. People nearby glanced over. Jonathan leaned forward just enough that his voice didn't travel. "You played yesterday because you needed something, even if you don't admit it." Emily stiffened. "What do you mean?" "You needed to feel something." To remember something. Not for me. For yourself. Emily walked away, unwilling to listen. She served drinks, replaced empty cups, swept crumbs from the counter, but the thought wouldn't leave her. He was right. She had needed that moment. After the rush faded, she went outside, mostly to tell the small crowd she wasn't playing. But when she stepped out, she didn't speak. Her feet simply carried her toward the old piano. Jonathan stood a short distance away. Emily sat. The breeze pressed lightly against her back. No one spoke. One note. Then the melody began. Again. Not the same as yesterday. This time she added new parts, small parts, things she never practiced but felt in her bones. Her hand steadied a little more with each key. The sound drifted through the street, across parked cars, over the sidewalk. People walking by slowed. A delivery driver paused mid-step. Someone standing at the corner closed their eyes. It wasn't loud. Emily didn't press hard. The music lived in softness. Jonathan watched, silent. When she reached the final note, she lifted her hands carefully, as though the sound might shatter if she moved too quickly. No applause this time. Just quiet. A deep kind of quiet. Then someone whispered, "That was beautiful," and another voice followed, "Do you have more?" Emily smiled faintly. "No," she said. Jonathan approached her slowly. "You wasting something," he told her. Emily stood. "I'm not wasting anything," she said softly. "I'm just living my life." Jonathan stepped closer, his voice steady. "You play like someone who could go far, and you're choosing to stay here wiping tables and serving coffee." Emily looked toward the diner, through the window where Oliver was flipping burgers and plates clattered. "This place matters," she said. "People know me here." "And what about the people who could know you elsewhere?" he asked. She didn't reply. She went back inside. But the moment did not end. Inside, the diner felt different. Not louder, not busier. Just different. That evening, after closing, Jonathan stayed. Only Oliver, Emily, and him remained. Jonathan spoke first. "I want to offer you something," he said. Emily sighed. "If it's more money." "I don't want it." "It's not money," he said. "It's opportunity." Oliver looked between them with quiet eyes. Jonathan continued. "There's a private event tomorrow. People with influence will be there. People who appreciate talent. I want you to come with me and play." Emily's breath caught. "No," she said immediately. "You didn't think about it," he replied. "I don't need to, you do." Jonathan insisted. "For what?" she snapped. "To stop hiding." He answered. Silence stretched. Emily looked at the floor. Her voice softened. "You don't know me. You don't know why I don't play." Jonathan didn't flinch. "You're right. I don't, but I know talent when I hear it. And I don't believe talent is meant to stay silent." Oliver nodded, adding quietly, "He's right." Emily turned to him. "You think I should go?" Oliver shrugged. "I think you'll regret it if you don't." Emily shook her head. "What if I'm not good enough?" Jonathan answered plainly. "You already are. You just don't want to believe it." Emily couldn't speak. Her chest felt tight again, not painful, just full. Jonathan walked toward the door. "I'll be here at 6 tomorrow," he said. "If you walk out, I'll take you to the event. If you don't, I'll leave and never ask again." He opened the door. "One chance. You choose." Then he walked out. The door closed behind him. Emily locked it slowly and turned off the lights. Her footsteps echoed faintly as she walked home. When she reached the piano, she stopped again. She sat. This time she didn't intend to play. She only placed her fingers over the keys. But the music came anyway. Soft, quiet, and full. She closed her eyes and let herself play until the night swallowed the sound. When she finally stood to leave, she whispered to herself, "I don't know if I can do it." But even as she said it, something deep inside her answered back, "Yes, you can." The street was empty. Only the echo of her melody remained. And tomorrow the choice would arrive. The morning sun was pale and soft as Emily walked toward the diner. Her steps were slower than usual. Each one carried a mixture of excitement and fear. Last night's music still lingered in her mind, echoing as if the piano had etched itself into her memory. She tried not to think about the evening ahead, the private event Jonathan had promised, but every thought seemed to drift back to it. She arrived at the diner to find it busier than normal. A few people waited outside for their orders, chatting quietly. Inside, Oliver moved between tables and the kitchen with ease, flipping burgers and taking orders without a word. He glanced at Emily but said nothing, leaving her to prepare for her shift. Customers came and went in quick succession. Pancakes, toast, coffee, eggs. She moved from table to table, always with a smile, always patient. But her mind was elsewhere. She imagined the piano in her apartment. She imagined the keys under her fingers at the event. She imagined playing for people who weren't just passersby, who weren't just curious neighbors, people who would listen, truly listen. Around mid-morning, Jonathan arrived. He didn't go straight to the counter this time. He walked through the diner, nodding at a few customers, observing Emily as if measuring something invisible. When he reached her, he spoke quietly. "You've thought about it," he said. Emily shook her head. "I can't," she said softly. "I don't belong in that world." Jonathan's expression didn't change. "You belong wherever you choose to be. But this is an opportunity. You either take it or let it pass." She wanted to protest, but she stayed silent. There was something in his tone that made words difficult. He left the diner shortly after, leaving her with her thoughts and the hum of the day. Hours passed, and Emily felt the tension building. The diner buzzed with activity, yet it felt smaller somehow, constricted. She kept sneaking glances at the clock. Closing time couldn't come soon enough. Finally, the rush ended. Only a few late customers lingered. Emily cleaned up quickly, her hands moving automatically, but her heart was elsewhere. She locked the doors and stepped outside, walking toward the piano. The crowd was larger this time. Word had spread, as it always did when something unusual happened in this quiet neighborhood. People whispered and nudged each other. A small group of children sat on the curb, eyes wide, waiting. Parents watched from behind them. Even a few local shopkeepers had come out, curious about the music girl everyone had spoken about. Jonathan's car rolled to a stop at the curb. He stepped out gracefully, nodding to the people gathered. He didn't speak. He simply walked toward the piano and stood near it, silently giving Emily space. She approached the piano slowly, each step heavy. Her hands trembled, but her resolve hardened. She had practiced, in a way, through every quiet moment since the first dare. She had learned to trust the music inside her. She sat on the bench and placed her fingers over the keys, a single note, then another, and another. The music began softly, like water spilling into a calm pool. Her fingers moved with confidence she didn't know she had, as if they remembered every melody her mother had taught her. Each note carried emotion, longing, joy, hope, and sorrow intertwined. The crowd grew silent, drawn into her world. Phones were raised, but people watched more than they recorded. Each person leaned closer to the sound, captivated by the unexpected beauty emerging from an old, worn piano. Jonathan stood nearby, quietly observing. His usual sharp demeanor was softened. He could see her potential, the talent he had glimpsed before, and it was greater than he had imagined. Emily's melody shifted, weaving into something entirely her own. She didn't play to impress anyone. She played because she had to, because the music had been waiting inside her for years, waiting for the right moment to breathe. When she reached the final note, she lifted her hands slowly, letting silence fill the space. The sound lingered in the air like a warm whisper. Then applause broke out. Not loud, not chaotic, but heartfelt. People clapped, some cheered softly. Children clapped with unrestrained joy. Emily felt her face flush, her chest heaving with a mix of relief and exhilaration. Jonathan stepped closer. "That was extraordinary," he said. His voice carried both admiration and surprise. Emily looked down at her hands. "It's just music," she said quietly. "No," he said firmly. "It's more than that. It's talent. It's heart. And it deserves to be shared." The crowd lingered, reluctant to leave. Strangers approached her, offering kind words, smiles, even small tips. One woman handed her a folded piece of paper. "You should read this," she said. Emily unfolded it carefully. Inside was a note from a local music teacher who had watched and wanted to contact her. The note mentioned opportunities for lessons, scholarships, and guidance for someone with raw but undeniable skill. Emily's heart raced. She had never imagined this would happen. Music had always been private, personal, a secret she hid from the world. Now it seemed to reach further than she could have dreamed. Jonathan placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "I told you, you're meant for more than small stages," he said. Emily looked up at him. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "You can," he said simply. "You just have to try." The evening sky deepened to shades of purple and orange. Streetlights flickered on, casting a soft glow over the scene. People began to leave, but the excitement lingered. Emily felt it too, inside her chest, spreading warmth and courage. Later that night, as she walked home, the note safely in her pocket, she felt a shift. Something inside her had awakened. Music wasn't just a memory anymore. It was alive, and it was hers to share. For the first time, she considered the possibility that life could be bigger than the small routines she had accepted. She stopped at the piano on the way home. For a moment, she just rested her fingers on the keys, letting the memory of the day flow through her. She didn't play. She didn't need to. The music was already there, embedded in her spirit. That night, Emily lay in bed, thoughts spinning. The private event awaited, and the possibilities it could bring felt both thrilling and terrifying. But she knew one thing: she would never be the same. Music had found its voice inside her, and she could no longer ignore it. The city was quiet outside her window, but Emily's mind was alive with sound, melody, and dreams she had long kept hidden. The next day would bring new choices, new courage, and perhaps the beginning of a life she had never imagined possible. And as she drifted to sleep, she carried the music with her, a promise of what was to come. The next morning, Emily woke with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She had dreamed about this day for years in quiet moments, yet never imagined it would come in this way. The private event Jonathan had mentioned was today, a room full of people who could make a difference, who could listen, who could notice her talent. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. She got ready slowly, choosing a simple outfit that made her feel presentable but still comfortable. She tied her hair back, took a deep breath, and left her apartment, feeling the cold morning air against her skin. The streets were quiet, the city just waking up, and for a moment, she felt like the world was hers to step into. Jonathan's car was parked near the diner when she arrived. He stepped out and offered a small nod of encouragement. No words were necessary. Emily climbed in, her fingers fidgeting in her lap, and they drove through the city streets. The skyline was bathed in a soft golden light, and Emily watched silently, lost in her own thoughts. When they arrived at the venue, Emily was surprised by the elegance of the place. The doors opened into a large hall with polished floors, chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, and people dressed in suits and dresses, talking in low, refined tones. She felt a pang of doubt. This world seemed so far from her own. But Jonathan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You belong here," he said softly. "Remember that." Emily nodded, though her stomach fluttered. They walked toward the piano, placed at the center of the room. It was grand, beautiful, and waiting. Emily's hands hovered over the keys. The moment felt heavier than any moment before. She took a deep breath, thinking of her mother, thinking of the melodies that had always been inside her. Jonathan whispered, "Play for yourself first. The rest will follow." The first note rang out softly, then another. Slowly, Emily's fingers moved across the keys, delicate and deliberate. She played the melody she had been practicing, the one that had begun on that old, worn piano by the street. It grew richer, stronger, each note carrying emotion, memories, hope, and longing. People stopped talking. They listened. Eyes turned, phones lowered, and the room became silent, filled only with the music that Emily created. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was heartfelt, personal, moving. Each note told a story, her story, and everyone could feel it. Emily closed her eyes, letting the music flow. She remembered her mother's gentle guidance, the quiet evenings at home, and the piano that had once been a simple piece of wood and keys. Now, it was a bridge to a world she had never entered but always carried within her. When she reached the final note, the silence lingered for a heartbeat before the room erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, and smiling. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Emily's face flushed, her hands still hovering over the keys. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected anyone to care. Jonathan stepped forward, beaming. "You see, you have always had this," he said. "Now others can see it too." Emily felt overwhelmed. She didn't know whether to speak, to smile, or to cry. All of it swirled inside her. A woman approached her, a music teacher who had watched the performance. She handed Emily a card and said, "We should talk. There are opportunities here. Scholarships, lessons, ways to share your gift." Emily took it with trembling hands. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," the woman replied gently. "Say yes to yourself." As the event continued, Emily realized something remarkable. This wasn't about Jonathan or the crowd. It was about her. The music had always been inside her, waiting. Now, it had a chance to live outside the walls of her small apartment, outside the diner, beyond the city streets. Later, as she packed her things, Jonathan approached again. "So, what do you think?" he asked. Emily smiled. For the first time, it was genuine, unforced. "I think I can do this. I want to do this." He nodded, satisfied. "Good. That's all that matters." The ride back to the diner was quiet. Emily looked out the window, seeing the streets she had walked countless times in a new light. Everything seemed possible now. The city didn't feel small. The world didn't feel distant. That evening, she returned to the diner, greeted by familiar faces. Oliver gave her a knowing look but didn't ask questions. The regulars nodded, some whispering about the performance they had heard on the news. Emily smiled softly at them, realizing that her life could embrace both worlds, the ordinary and the extraordinary. After cleaning up and locking the doors, Emily walked home. On the way, she passed the old street piano. For a long moment, she sat and pressed a few keys. The notes were rougher, older, but they carried memories. She played quietly, just for herself, letting the music remind her of how far she had come. Her apartment welcomed her with familiar scents and soft shadows. She placed the card on the table, next to the unopened bills, and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new performances, new choices. But for now, she allowed herself to simply be an ordinary woman with an extraordinary gift, ready to step into a life she had only ever dreamed of. Days turned into weeks. Emily took lessons, practiced daily, and began performing at small events. Her confidence grew. The city noticed. Local papers ran stories about the waitress who played her way into hearts. Musicians and teachers reached out. Jonathan continued to support her quietly, attending performances, offering guidance but never pressuring her. Through it all, Emily never forgot the diner, the streets, or the piano that had started it all. She returned often, sometimes playing for a small group of neighbors, sometimes just sitting quietly and letting her fingers find familiar notes. The music remained personal, but it also reached beyond her, touching lives she could never have imagined. Months later, she performed her original composition at a small concert hall. The audience was captivated. Jonathan sat in the front row, proud but unobtrusive. Emily played with a passion she had never felt before. Each note resonated with her journey, the struggles, the doubts, the triumphs. When the final note faded, applause filled the hall, louder and more genuine than ever. Emily stood, her heart full, tears brimming in her eyes. This was her life now, her path, her music. Jonathan approached afterward, smiling warmly. "I knew you could do it," he said. Emily shook her head, laughing softly through tears. "I didn't know I could either." "Not until now," he nodded. "The world can't hide talent forever. It finds a way." She smiled, looking out at the audience, at the people who had come to listen. And in that moment, she realized she had found her place. Not just at the piano, not just in the spotlight, but in life itself. From that day on, Emily balanced her world, serving coffee, wiping tables, playing melodies, performing on stages, and teaching others what she had learned. She never forgot her beginnings, nor the dare that changed everything. She knew that a single note, played with courage, could ripple through the world and alter it in ways unimaginable. And every time she played, she remembered the piano on the street, the quiet moments with her mother, and the millionaire who dared her to play. She remembered the music inside her, waiting to be heard, and the truth that it had always belonged to her.